So in this video, I'm just going to recap what the economic quantities and rates are that you're going to need to know for your classes. So the most basic economic function that you're going to be using is the demand or price. Those are the same thing. And it's usually represented by a lowercase p. So for that we have demand or price. So for all of the functions that I'm going to be naming here, x is always the quantity, how many units are produced. And keep in mind that in a given function, the problem might tell you that x is in hundreds or thousands, so you need to keep that in mind. So what this function gives you is what the price of each unit is being sold at a given x number of units. The next one that we're going to do is the revenue function. The revenue function is always given by x times the demand function. And the revenue always tells you how much money you are making. This should make sense because if little p of x tells us how much each unit sells for, however much each unit sells for times how many you sell, which is what x is, would give you how much money you made. That's your revenue. The next one is cost, which is a capital C. That's usually a function that's given to you, and it could be made up of two things: fixed costs and variable costs. So fixed costs are always just a number. It costs you $1,000 to run the factory, or something like that. Variable costs are costs that are dependent on how many you make. So the cost function is always going to be of the form a plus bx, or potentially this could be a more complex term. All that's important that it has x in it. So this is fixed, and this is variable. And the cost, of course, is how much it costs you to make these amount of product. And finally, we have the profit, which is capital P. So this is profit. Profit, of course, is always revenue minus cost. How much money did you make from selling all of your units, and how much did it cost you to make them? The difference of that is the profit that you made. So these are the basic functions you're going to need to work with. But there are many different things you can do with these functions. If you wanted to take the average of any of these things, and most likely this is going to be with cost, but it could be with any of them. The average cost, I'll just do it with cost, but like I said, this could be for any of them. The average is represented by a bar over the letter, and what that means is you just take your regular function and divide every term by x. So that's an average function would be how much it costs per unit. So that's just dividing by x. The other vocabulary word you're going to need to get used to is marginal. So if you want the marginal cost, the marginal revenue, the marginal profit, that means you take the derivative. So that is marginal cost. Again, that could be something that applies to revenue or profit also. Marginal means take the derivative. Average, you need to write that there, means take your function and divide it by x. So the last thing I want to talk about is how you might have to combine average and marginal. So think of it like this: if you were given a cost function and they wanted you to take the average marginal cost, that's different than taking the marginal average cost. So if you were taking the marginal average cost, what that means is you take the average cost and take the derivative of that. So you would need to do the average cost and then do the derivative. On the other hand, if you wanted the average marginal cost, that would mean that you need to take the marginal cost and do the average of it, which means you would take c prime of x and then do the average of it, meaning dividing by x. So this would look like c prime of x over x. This here would be the derivative of c of x over x. So we have demand or price, little p. We have revenue, which is x times little p. We have a cost function, which could be made up of fixed and variable amounts. We have profit, which is revenue minus cost. And we have these terms average and marginal that represent dividing by x and derivative. And just be careful about the order that they can be written in. And remember, throughout all of this, x represents the amount or the number of units that you are producing, selling, anything like that. So these are all the economic quantities and rates that you're going to need to know.